Now it's time to answer the question, are historians liberal? No. They are not partisan. They look at a lot of presidencies and they look at the decisions and all the documents that have been made during the presidency. And they will look at the generals somebody chooses in a war. And a lousy president will put the worst generals in charge to take a good situation and it goes downhill. And when you look at it, historians give Reagan way more points than they give Jimmy Carter. They do not think he was a good president. He did not have good economic management. He was ineffective, but the main thing about it was, he would have been a better EPA head. The renewable energy may have been a good thing, but he just shouldn't have been president. He didn't listen to people who were experts. He listened to his mom and people like that and kind of isolated himself from the experts. So that's one thing. Now, Reagan had very smart people in charge, and he listened to realists. And Bush Sr. did too. So they all have points in history. Now, Clinton promised a lot and did so little, and he was a crooked, scandal-ridden presidency, and history is still in the making on him and Bush. So I'm not going to get into either one of those because we need a good 40 to 50 years. There's no telling what's going to happen and unfold because people are looking one way or the other at it. And, now when you look at Truman, Truman was a crisis manager. Was he educated? No, he was not. He was a very scrappy guy who basically was a tough leader, and he ran on the principles of a realist. And he really had a nuclear presidency because he dropped the first atom bomb. We thought, oh my God, he's a big disaster. He just killed all those people. But then he really set the tone for management during the Cold War. And you know what? Having the fact that we knew about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the impact it caused, we never, ever use one of those weapons on another country again. And so he saved a lot of lives in the future, because if he didn't drop the bombs, we might have dropped one on Russia and ended up being wiped off the map and destroying the whole planet. So Truman gets those points because he refused to listen to MacArthur when he wanted to nuke China and go in there, because he knew that would be World War III. And so he got a lot of criticism, but history has given him more points. Now, we go back, Franklin D. Roosevelt had very strong leadership during World War II. He had extremely skilled generals like Eisenhower and MacArthur. He put the best people in charge. Not everything he did was successful, but he kept working on stuff, and he had a lot of leadership ability. And crisis management, him and Lincoln go down very highly. Now, historians look at the impact, and they take it apart like a chess game, and they look at everything somebody's done. And you know what? Historians don't rank Clinton very well in crisis management. And, foreign relations, it's kind of spotty too. So historians don't really give a damn whether you're a conservative or a liberal or what. They care about your decisions, and they care about what you sign into law and the impact it has the next 10 to 20 years. And these people have doctoral degrees. They have studied presidencies back to back. And you know who the worst presidents are? Buchanan. Oh my God, this guy allowed the South to succeed from the Union and was even sympathetic to the enemy. I mean, he was even sympathetic to the people who succeeded. And he did not manage the economy well. He could not handle crises. And the worst thing about it was he had political experience and still was an inept moron. He was the biggest loser in the world. And you know what? Herbert Hoover's the definition of a failure, because a failure president has failed policies. They keep embracing them. They have a misconception, and it becomes a failure in their administration. And so, like, Herbert Hoover had failures with the economy because he thought the Great Depression would basically solve itself, which was just not going to happen because the whole world economy was down. And in Germany, Hitler used it to take control of the country. And immediately that led to the Holocaust, because he started blaming the problems on Jews by saying they were socialists. And he used this situation to motivate people and brainwash them into the Nazi Party. And because of the bad economy, Germans under Hitler started using this to take over parts of the world and get the oil from North Africa. And look at the Japanese in World War II. Same way. They invaded Manchuria, and they invaded Southeast Asia, and they took over Indonesian oil, and they basically started taking over the world in their bad economy to build an empire. But they used force and motivated people, using fear, which was fascism. And, the preemptive fighting during World War II by the Axis powers was used through the Great Depression to basically build an empire and take over resources. So, the economy and resources on the planet will ultimately determine a lot of things. And if parts of the world end up with loss of arable farmland and water becomes scarce, and you end up with aquifers being drained and saltwater intrusion, and if the climate starts to change and the planet heats up and parts of the world that are arable farmland become desert in the next few decades, there will be genocides, there will be civil unrest, countries could collapse and end up like Somalia, and you'll end up with lots of insurgencies and militias, and you'll end up with genocide. And you'll have people saying, this is their fault. Let's annihilate these people. And it happened in Rwanda. It happened in Bosnia and a lot of places. But what we don't realize now is the world is connected. Like the Anasazi and basically the people in Easter Island destroyed their environment. And they ran out of water and resources. And like Easter Island, they cut down all the trees. Eventually they couldn't grow crops. And they ended up without resources. And they didn't have any connection with the outside world. So eventually they ended up resorting to cannibalism and died out. Well, in this day and age, the world's connected. And so if you have a serious war, you have refugees that leave that environment. And it was a stable environment. And now they go into another place and they tax the resources from that environment. And if you have 8 million refugees going from one country into another, that country's going to become overcrowded. And it's going to end up having more sewage and water contamination. And it's going to destroy the resources there. And it's going to start putting a higher tax. And the main concern right now is more people in the world are living at higher levels of affluence and consuming more resources than ever before. And so that's going to put a huge stress on water and arable land to grow crops. And if the world's population goes from almost 7 billion or around that number to 20 to 30 billion, where are we going to get enough food for all those people? And there's going to be huge wars going out in the future. So, this is all stuff to consider. Sustainability is an ultimate thing that we have got to be concerned about, because sustainability will ultimately end up resulting in some serious security threats if we don't start working on it now. And, so are historians liberal? They are concerned with what's going on, and they are realists, and they tend to be more like Colin Powell, and they look at what's going to happen, and they look at things like Robert Byrd, and they try and make predictions, and you got to look at it. Where does this historian fall? Ask yourself, when this historian's looking at this president, what did he predict was going to happen? Did it happen? If not, okay, he's kind of off the spectrum and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's kind of a doomsday scenario person. But you got to look at where they fall. And basically, you got to look at how accurate they are, because some historians are just, running their mouth about stuff, and some really know what they're talking about. So that's my review, and thank